I walked into Dawn's law firm opening and felt the room close on me. They laughed. They pointed. "The loser husband is here," someone sneered. Dawn stood tall. She handed me an envelope. "The first job of my firm is our divorce," she said. I signed the papers like a ghost. I left quiet. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I quietly canceled every payment. I pulled my $17 million investment. An hour later, my phone lit up with 31 missed calls. Then someone knocked at my door. The night was only starting. Houston sits heavy in summer heat. The air tastes like barbecue and gasoline. My block is full of small joys. Kids play on cracked sidewalks. Neighbors wave from porches. Sundays smell like fried chicken and church hymnals. My mama, rest her soul, kept a plate warm for whoever stopped by. That memory lives in me. Dawn and I had a rhythm. It was soft at first, coffee at 6. She'd tie her scarf, kiss my forehead, and head to court. I ran investments. I wore clean shirts and quiet pride. Our home was low light, dark wood floors, a leather couch that knew our weight. Warmth lived in a kitchen with a worn recipe book. On Fridays, we cooked with cousins. On Sundays, we sat through 2 services and laughed about choir solos. I thought that made us strong. Dawn was magnetic. She moved like she owned air. Her laugh filled rooms. In private, she was softer. We shared looks over late dinners. She'd rest her head on my shoulder. She'd say, "You steady me, Rick." I believed that then. I thought she believed me too. We built things together. I put money where her dreams could breathe. She used my name in meetings. I watched as her name grew on brass doors. I stood proud. I gave her chances. I believed in loyalty. Small things tied us. A barbecue where my cousins teased her about briefs. Her mother calling, "Dawn, baby, you good?" Her sisters stopping by with gossip. Our friends, our people. We had shared history. We had jokes that only we laughed at. But the house had quiet corners too. Dawn took late calls that started at the kitchen table. She'd stash a file under the couch cushion. She'd pull her phone away when I walked in. I'd see a text light on her face, then watch her smooth it away. I told myself it was stress. Work was hectic. Lawyers carry heavy loads. One night she hugged me and smelled like perfume that wasn't hers. I smiled and asked about it. She said she was meeting a client. I let it be. My gut tightened then just a bit. I brushed it down. That day at the firm opening, the neighborhood smell, our house light, our jokes, they all felt like props. Something in the rhythm cleaved. I walked into the opening like a man who trusted. They set a trap. I left with an envelope, and a cold line cut into me. I knew then something was off. The taste of metal was in my mouth. I kept walking, but I wasn't the same. The night had teeth. I would learn how to use them. The change was small at first. A missed detail. A new ringtone. Dawn used to answer my calls with that warm, "Hey, love." Now she let them ring. Her eyes slid away when I caught her looking at a screen. She started working late, not just late, later than late. She'd come home, put her bag down like it was heavy with secrets, and walk past me to the pantry. I watched more than I asked. I noticed the way she straightened her jacket before opening the door, the way she breathed shallow on the phone. When she laughed, it sounded practiced. She stopped sharing the small joys. She stopped pointing out a new paint color or a new pair of shoes. I missed the little things the way you miss sun when the clouds stay too long. I asked once, "You good?" I kept my voice soft. I wanted to trust. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, Richard. Work's crazy." She said it like a script. Her thumb erased a blue message bubble at the same time. That was a new thing. She never deleted messages. She let receipts pile. She kept everything. Her wardrobe shifted. She started wearing sharper clothes, tailored, expensive. The woman who loved perfume now smelled like a room with too many candles. I felt a line sliding between us. Community people started to notice. My cousin Marcus asked, "You okay, man?" I shrugged. I lied. "Better every day." That's what men say sometimes to keep shame from walking in. The late calls turned into late meetings. The client dinners were long. I'd fall asleep on the couch with the TV low. I'd hear her heels click down the hallway at midnight. Once I followed the sound to the study. The door was slightly open. I saw the glow of a laptop. I saw her silhouette bent over papers. Her face was lit like a statue in a museum, cold, intentional. She didn't look up. When she finally did, she smiled like she never had before. It was not my smile. It belonged to someone else. There were small lies, little excuses that stacked. I left my notes at the office. My partner needs me. I'll make it up to you. Each one landed like a penny in a jar. I could feel the jar filling. It made noise when I picked it up. That noise lived in my chest. One evening I needed to sign a document for a charity. She took it from me with a hand that trembled. Her fingers were steady, but I saw her eyes dodge to the phone on the table. It vibrated. She let it go. I watched the vibration stop. She didn't pick it up. The next morning her calendar had events I'd never heard about. Team breakfast, branding session, media run. Things moved fast for her, too fast without me. I searched for reasons. Men talk to other men differently. Marcus said, "You sure you ain't overthinking?" My boy Jamal said, "Trust your eyes, Rick. Don't let pride buy you blinders." I swallowed pride then. I started laying small traps. I'd call and ask the time. I'd show up at the office just to drop off breakfast. She always smiled when she saw me, but the smiles were like polished silver, neat and cold. There were nights of silence. We'd sit in the same room and not speak. The TV played without sound. My phone glowed with 2 a.m. messages from her that read "on my way" and then nothing. I started to jot things down, small records, little marks I could return to. It felt like saving coins for something I couldn't name. Avoiding eye contact was new. She'd tuck her chin. She'd pretend the house was empty when it was. She started locking her laptop with a code I didn't know. I used to know her coffee order. I used to know how Dawn liked her toast. I knew where her pen sat. Those were intimacy. Those were trust. One day I sat at the kitchen table and watched a video on my phone. It was short, 2 people at a celebratory event. Dawn was there. She looked proud. She hugged a man I didn't know. The video ended and someone typed, "Big night for the new firm." I felt something break in me, not sudden but like a winter branch snapping under weight. The branch fell. Sound traveled. I touched the wood of the table and felt my hands shake. I confronted once more. "Gentle, we need to talk." She looked at me like I'd opened an old wound. "About what?" she asked. Her voice was flat. I said, "About us." She kissed my cheek like a goodbye. "Let's not do this here," she said. She closed the door to the bedroom and left me on the wrong side of the glass. By then the signs were obvious. Her face had changed. My place in her life had shifted. I felt like a man in a play who had missed his cue. I kept collecting small facts. I watched. I waited, but waiting is heavy, and weight makes a man bend. I was bending. I kept my head steady, but under the surface my heart was building a map. I didn't know the destination. I only knew the road would lead somewhere I could not ignore. The next discovery would not be subtle. It was a Thursday night. Rain had started, soft and steady. The street smelled of wet asphalt and hot oil from a taco truck. I sat in the car outside a building where I knew she'd been working long hours. The glow from the streetlight made the rain look like slow fire. I watched people leave. I waited. My phone buzzed with one of those messages that changes a man's day. The notification came from a mutual friend. Dawn and just posted. "New firm sign. Big announcement." I clicked. Pictures loaded. Dawn stood in front of glass doors with a plaque. She looked radiant. Beside her was a man with a tight smile, a man dressed in a crisp suit. I'd seen that smile before in courtrooms and in magazine shots. The caption read, "From day one, Dawn Law Group." Comments poured in like applause. I felt an old calm leave my chest. I drove home slow. The house was dark. Dawn's car was not there. I went inside. The living room light was dim. Her perfume lingered like a ghost. I breathed it in and it tasted like a lie. I found the envelope on the kitchen table. It had been sealed with a neat white sticker. My name was on it in her handwriting. My hands trembled when I picked it up. The air was thick. I could hear my pulse in my ears. I opened it. Inside, the full pages of divorce papers folded like a flag. Dawn had already filed. Her signature sat cold and sure on the lines that would cut our life in half. My stomach emptied, my throat tightened. My hands were too loud in the quiet house. I sat down on the kitchen chair. The leather squeaked under me. I ran a thumb along the paper and felt the ink real, permanent, my name, her name, the date, the courthouse stamp. The paper had a weight that made the room tilt. I remember small things then. The hum of the fridge, the faint tapping of rain, the way the room smelled of lemon cleaner. I thought of our first house key. I thought of the barbecue where my cousin toasted our future. I thought of little things, Dawn's laugh in the living room, the way she used to press her forehead against mine. Those memories hit like slow blows. Called her. The call went straight to voicemail. I listened to the beep and put the phone down. My hands were steady now but cold. I read the papers again. There was a clause I hadn't expected. The firm, Dawn's new firm, listed my name as a guarantor on a project she'd promised to handle. There were numbers, payments I'd been making. There were clauses about investments and obligations. My $17 million had been invested in a fund Dawn said would be her stepping stone. I had trusted her. I walked through the house like a man in a fog. I pulled out a file cabinet and started flipping through paperwork. Contracts, emails, receipts. Somewhere in the middle of Polaroids and check stubs I found a bank notification. A recent wire transfer to a trust under a name I didn't recognize. The amount? Large, too large. It made the room hum. I felt a door open in me that I had not planned to open. The quiet that had been my weapon turned into a mirror. I saw myself for what I was, naive, in love, betrayed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. Instead, I sat and watched the rain trace paths down the window. Her voice came from the bedroom then, soft, not contrite. "Richard?" she asked. She walked in like the room belonged to her, which it did. Her hair fell in waves. She held herself like someone who had rehearsed this. Her nerve steadied me. I kept the papers in my lap. I didn't look up. She paused at the doorway. "I left the envelope," she said. Her voice was clipped. "I wanted you to know." I felt a hollow place in my chest. I looked at her then. She was beautiful in a way that hurt. "You filed?" I asked. My voice was small. The man who liked to be in control surprised me. She sat across from me. Her eyes avoided mine. "I signed the papers weeks ago," she said. "I didn't want to hurt you, I just—" Her words broke like fragile glass. "Why?" The question came out soft and raw. I wanted answers, but not at the cost of losing my voice. She inhaled, then began to explain. Her tone had the practiced cadence of someone used to arguing points in court. She spoke of ambition, of doors opening, of needing to be her own name. She spoke of mistakes I had made. She spoke of a partner who believed in her. I felt every word like cold air. I watched her shape the truth into something smaller, easier to swallow. But a paper doesn't lie. The courthouse stamp didn't bend. Her thumbprint on those pages said more than her words. I felt a tide of anger and grief. There was a sharpness to both. "You put our life at risk," I said. "You used my name." My voice gained weight. "You built a firm while you hid things." The room was a courtroom now. My heart pounded. She offered excuses. She offered charm. She offered tears. I thought of our money. I thought of the $17 million fund. I thought of my trust. My hands tightened on the papers until the edges creased. I pressed my thumb into the ink like it might smear the truth away. When she left the room, she kissed my forehead. It felt like a seal. It felt like a verdict. She walked out holding her phone close. I watched her go. The house felt like a stage after the actors had left. The rain kept falling. That night I realized everything was about to change. I felt a cold resolve settle under the hurt. The envelope on the table was not just paper. It was a match. I would not burn in silence. I sat at the kitchen table with the divorce papers in front of me. The house hummed around me. The fridge, the air vents, the distant sound of someone locking up a neighbor's car. I breathed slow. I let anger and hurt sit beside me, but I would not let them steer. I am Richard. I am calm by nature. I learned to breathe under pressure. I learned to count steps when decisions meant money and lives. This was a different kind of pressure. It was personal. It cut deeper. But I have tools that go with who I am. I am methodical, I am patient, I plan. First, I pulled the money, quietly. I called the accounts man I trusted. I didn't tell him why. I said only what needed saying. Move the investment to liquid, pull out the partnership funds. He hesitated. He asked why. I said, do it. He did. The wire went through like a whisper. My chest eased a fraction. The $17 million left a fund she thought she could touch. It left a trust she expected. I watched the confirmation ping on my phone like a tiny victory. Then I canceled payments. Automatic deposits, private cards, discretionary funding. I turned off them like lights. I watched subscriptions die. I changed passwords. I moved assets into accounts under names she couldn't find. I did it with absolute calm. I did not brag. I did not announce. Revenge that sings is rarely effective. Quiet revenge is a cold blade. It cuts where no one sees. While I moved money, I gathered proof. I printed copies of transfers, I screenshot emails, I photographed receipts. I made a file that would be a bulletproof story, not for video, not for gossip, for court, for leverage, for truth. I labored over details, I cross-checked timestamps. I called an old friend who knows his way around audits. He asked no questions that I didn't want him to ask. He only said, "We'll follow the paper trail." I acted normal in public. I went to the gym. I worked in the office. I laughed with friends. I cooked her favorite weekend breakfast and ate it quietly. I kept my face calm. Dawn watched me a few times and said, "You seem fine." That was the point. She needed to believe the house was the same. Confidence is an anchor. It hides storms. People talk in neighborhoods. I had to be careful. I told only a few. I told Marcus and Jamal that I had a headache and needed to sleep on things. They nodded like men who knew when to stand down. They stayed quiet. Loyalty isn't loud. It is steady. I set small traps. I wrote an email from my business account to an old vendor asking for a copy of a contract. I requested a statement. I sent a routine note to the partner who handled Dawn's accounts. I called to confirm a meeting that didn't exist. Each little move was a breadcrumb. I watched who tried to pick them up. At night, I slept with one eye open. Sometimes I would wake and check my phone just to see if anything had shifted. The glow of screens became a compass. I learned every tone that meant trouble. The cold glow of a bank alert would set my pulse racing, but mostly it was quiet. Silence can be deafening. It is where plans are born. I felt my resolve change. Hurt turned into focus. I remembered my grandfather's voice. A man can be broken or he can be bowed. Don't let the world make you brittle. I bowed, then stood stronger. I let strategy shape me. I learned Dawn's schedule. I learned her partner's names. I learned the flow of her days. I cataloged the lies. Friends noticed my distance. Dawn asked if I was okay. I would put a hand to her face and say, "I'm tired, baby. Let's talk tomorrow." My tone was warm. My touch was real. But my mind was at the same table where the papers lay building. Then I set the real move. I knew she had planned to use my funds. I set a paper trail that would show the court exactly how the money had been used. I had an attorney on retainer. He was quiet but sharp. We spoke in plain language. I let him know I would not be the man who walked away empty. I told him what I'd done already, pulled the funds. He said, "Good, keep calm, build the file." People think revenge is loud. They imagine shouting, slamming doors, dramatic reveals. My revenge was small and surgical. It resembled the way a surgeon works. It cut what needed to be cut. It left the body intact but altered. I would not dirty my hands with noise. The hardest part was acting like the man who still loved her. I would kiss her and feel a scalding inside. When she laughed with a partner I had already taken from under her, I watched and felt a strange peace. The money was gone from her reach. She had no inkling. She believed her firm and her name were secure. She thought I would fold. On a Thursday, after I had moved the last wire, my phone pinged. 31 missed calls. My heart thudded, but not for the reason you think. The calls were from bankers, lawyers, and a partner sounding frantic. My phone lit up. A voicemail had a voice I didn't expect, an old associate of Dawn's, breathless. "Richard, you need to call me now. This is big." I listened to that voicemail in a parking lot under a sodium light. I felt the old adrenaline hum through me. Someone had started to notice. Then at home, a car pulled into my drive. I saw headlights through the blinds. The engine cut off, footsteps on the porch. I opened the door and found a woman I hadn't seen in years, Dawn's former assistant. She stood there wet from the rain, eyes wide like a child who'd found fire. In her hand was a manila envelope. She said, "I couldn't keep this, you need to see it." I took the envelope. Inside were copies, emails, invoices, a ledger that tied Dawn's new partners to payments. The assistant's hands shook. "I didn't want to be part of it," she whispered. I felt a mixture of victory and a new ache. The plan was working. But the doorbell now meant more than papers. It meant the moment of truth was close. I closed the door. I set the files on the table. I felt the house shift. The chessboard was set. The pieces moved. Dawn had no idea her king was already cornered. The real confrontation would come. I was ready. I was not the same man who had walked into her opening. I was Richard with a plan. I was a man who would get his life back. I chose the night like you choose a song that fits your mood. It was quiet. Dawn thought the roads were clear. We had a small dinner planned, an attempt, I told myself, to unspool tension. I cooked. The house smelled like rosemary and garlic. The table was set with the plates we'd used for years. She walked in looking like she owned the room. The news hit her like the first beat of a drum. She thought tonight would be ordinary. She thought I would still be the man who forgave with a smile. We sat. She reached for my hand and said, "Everything okay?" Her voice had that practiced ease. I placed a stack of documents between my plate and hers. I didn't look up. I wanted her to read them. I wanted the paper to do the talking. She picked up the top page. Her fingers trembled just a little. She read. Her face changed, not with surprise, but with something like recognition. After a moment, she looked at me. "What is this?" Her voice was small. I poured 2 glasses of wine slow. I set one in front of her and one in front of me. "You remember when you told me the first job of your firm would be our divorce?" I asked. My voice was calm. It carried like a bell. She leaned back. "That's not," she stopped. I placed a printed bank confirmation on the table. Her eyes flicked to numbers she hadn't expected to see. I saw the color leave her face. "You filed," I said. "You filed and you hid it. You used my name to secure funding. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I'd sign and leave like a ghost. You told the world we were over before you sat me down to say it." She swallowed. She tried to speak. The excuses came thin. I needed to build something. You left me no choice. You were distant. Each word was a reed in a storm. I put another paper down, the ledger, the wire transfers, the confirmations, her partner's name, the dates, the emails where they joked about securing his blessing. She turned the pages like a person reading her own obituary. Her hands began to shake. She covered her mouth with one palm. I watched a woman who had hidden in plain sight lose her control. Tears started to come, but not yet. She reached for me. "Rick, please," she said. "We can fix this." I looked at her. I thought of every small thing she'd taken. Not just money, trust, future. I thought of how our house had become a stage for a show she directed from behind the curtains. I felt something lift in me. The silence between us was thick like velvet. "You know," I said, "I signed the papers because you asked me to leave, but I didn't leave anything for you to take." My voice stayed steady. "I canceled every payment. I pulled the $17 million from your fund. It's gone." The air left the room. I watched her face fall in slow motion. The wine trembled in her glass. For a moment she looked like a child who'd lost a balloon. Her eyes were wide with a horror I had felt months ago, but now it played out on her. She gasped, "You what?" I left nothing to chance. I placed copies of emails from the assistant who'd come to my door. I slid in bank confirmations and the notation from my lawyer. I put everything out like a surgeon exposes the wound so it can finally be treated. She laughed once, sharp and brittle. "You'll ruin me," she said. She was angry now, raw and real. You won't get away with this." I could feel the neighborhood outside listening. I could see my past friends turning in their minds. I could feel the cultural weight. Black marriages hold layers of loyalty, community standing, pride. I felt it all. But the thing about loyalty is it must be earned. She had spent mine. She stood up. Her body vibrated with a new kind of energy. She reached for the phone. "I can get new funding," she snapped. "You think this is it?" She was bargaining, frantic. Pride pushed her words into a corner. I slid across a copy of the divorce filing with a courthouse stamp. "You filed," I said, "but the trust you tried to touch is empty. The payments are canceled. The money is moved. I did not sign my life away to feed someone's ego." She stared at the papers. She dropped into the chair opposite me like the fight had left her. Tears came then, hot and unpracticed. She cried for the life we had. She cried for herself. She cried for the partners who had promised her the moon. I felt pity. I felt anger. I felt a strange calm. "I wanted to be a man who forgave," I said. "At the end of the day, I am still a husband who protects what is his. You betrayed that. I acted." She reached for me again. "We can talk to a judge. We can work it out." Her voice broke. I folded my hands. "We will talk in court," I said. "But know this is not about destroying you. It's about setting right what you broke." My tone was steady. My body was still. I was no longer the man who walked into a room to be mocked. She looked like someone who had been caught in a lie and found not only shame but consequence. I felt the cultural threads tug at us, family, church, neighbors, as if each were a judge watching. She covered her face and sobbed. The sound cut through me. She knew then she had already lost more than funds. She had lost the illusion. She had lost the faith she thought she could use like currency. The room closed around us. The confrontation had been soft at first, then precise, then devastating. She knew she had already lost. The aftermath moved like a slow tide. Word traveled through our block quick. People whispered at barbecues. Cousins asked questions that were careful and quiet. Community is a mirror. In that mirror, Dawn looked different. She had the look of someone who had mispriced loyalty. Legally, it played out the way plans do when you have proof. My lawyer laid our case out clean. Evidence was solid: bank records, emails, witness accounts. The court saw a woman who had used another's name and funds to build something she presented as her own. The judge weighed paper against story. Dawn did not lose everything overnight. Courts take time. But the firm's partners pulled back when the headlines started to form. Investors grew wary. Her name still hung on a door, but doors mean less when the foundation shakes. She lost clients. The press sniffed at the edges. Friends who toasted her success stopped answering calls. Family reactions cut deep. Her mother called once, voice trembling. "Baby, what happened?" she asked. My own cousins circled around me like slow wolves. Marcus came by the house and put a hand on my shoulder. "You did what you had to, Rick," he said. I nodded. But there was a sadness in his eyes I remember from our grandfather's funeral. Dawn's fall had a social price. The church ladies stopped inviting her to bake sales. Her sister avoided block events. The neighborhood was small. The whispers had teeth. I felt a strange kind of sorrow watching it happen. I didn't celebrate in public. I cleaned up quietly. I packed away the memory of her laugh. I walked without a parade. That was purposeful. Financially, the moves I made held. The $17 million was secure in accounts titled in ways that kept it safe from legal claims tied to her firm. I had protected what was ours. I had not acted in malice. I acted to protect my investment and our future. That distinction matters in briefings and in courts. Dawn faced consequences. She had to step down from the firm she'd built. Partners restructured. There were settlement talks. In the end, she lost the house she had wanted to call her own. The court saw the way she had arranged funds. They ordered restitution where appropriate. Pride often costs more than money. People who once teased me now nodded at me on the corner. Some offered quiet apologies. I accepted none publicly. I let time be the thing that smoothed edges. I walked through the neighborhood late at night sometimes and listened to the hush of the street. The city lights bled into the sky. It felt like a new kind of quiet, one that meant survival. Dawn's regret was visible. I saw it once when she passed my car at a light. Her face was hollow. She looked toward me like someone asking for a map back. I kept my eyes forward. I had given what I needed to give. The rest belonged to her to reckon with. My own heart needed mending. I found myself sitting on the back steps, the night air moving over me. I thought of the little things, Mama's plate still warm in memory, the smell of church hymnals, the laughter at family reunions. I attended my son's ball games when I could. I reconnected with cousins. I leaned into the community that had seen me through. In the end, I walked away stronger but not unscarred. I learned lessons about trust and boundaries. I learned to protect without becoming less human. I learned to be steady without being cold. Revenge gave me closure, but it was the work after that mattered most, the living that came next. A symbolic moment came on a morning drive. I left the house at dawn, the air was cool, the city was waking. I stopped at a bridge and watched the light lift off the water. Sunrise was not flashy, it was patient. That morning I felt like the light had always been there. I was simply catching up. People in my neighborhood still talk. Some still whisper. Some say I was cruel. Some say I did what any man should do. I don't argue. I only know the shape of my days now. I keep my hands steady. I keep my heart guarded but open where it counts. Dawn's chapter in my life closed. I walked forward. The city watched. Life moved on. The house stayed. The couch kept our weight. The recipe book sat on the counter like a relic. I let it stay. I let memories be what they are, lessons with soft edges. If you're watching this and alive to betrayal, hear me plain. Hurt is deep. Pride can make you quiet, but quiet does not mean weak. We are men of feeling. We are men of faith. We owe our family protection and truth. I did not set out to punish. I set out to protect what was mine and to hold myself to a standard. You can move with strategy and keep your soul. You can be calm and fierce at the same time. That balance is what saved me. If someone betrays you, gather facts. Guard your heart but don't harden it. Get help from people you trust. Let your moves be clean. Let the law do its work. Let the community bear witness. Most of all, remember this: dignity survives when you act with clarity, not noise. I'm Richard. I lost a version of love. I gained a new truth. The sun rose the next day. I woke up, I breathed, and I kept walking.